Countdown's on. A new round of tariffs on China is set to take effect on Sunday unless the country can work out a deal with the U.S. first. Right now, we're joined by the architect behind many of President Trump's America First policies, former White House chief strategist Steve Bannon. You've pointed out that the things that the president sort of stands for with his base were existing long before you got involved, and that President Trump, you didn't tell him about it. He is the leader of a lot of these policies.
As President Trump says, I'm his top student. I'm proud to be his top student. But these forces have been around for a while, and President Trump has galvanized them into a political movement that has seen, I think, an incredibly successful first term of his presidency.
Talking about China, Peter Navarro, under a pen name, an anagram of his last name, Ron Vara, says things, I guess, that what did you really mean? And he says it in there. I can't imagine you need a pen name, because under Steve Bannon, you write stuff that is I think, expresses your feelings adequately.
Peter Navarro is not shy about stating his cases. I think it's pretty straightforward. But look, in the trade relationship, I think I like quoting a liberal Democrat, some guy named Jim Cramer.
Right.
Last week, when the manifestation of Trump's economic policies are seen in this jobs number, and that's really the convergence of his trade deals, what he's done in energy dominance, deconstruction of the Ministry of State, which is massive deregulation, 8 taken off for every 1 put up. You see the manifestation. It's Cramer, who's a liberal Democrat, who says, hey, he should walk away from the table right now. We're winning.
Do you think that's a manifestation of his trade policy with China, though?
I think it's a big part of it. I think tariffs, to me, it's quite obvious. I think to many people, Jim Cramer on the left and guys like Christian Witten on the right, is that the trade is a major component piece of this. Remember,
so you don't look at the trade story as being a drag on the economy at all?
Absolutely not. And I think all the cheerleaders of Wall Street that have been on the show and others over the last year have just been wrong. They've been wrong every time what they've been telling the president to do. I think they've been wrong. And he's had a very stable, a very steady course, an island of stability to kind of lay out what he wants to accomplish, to really, and I think this is to integrate China more into the world's economy. Look, here's the one thing I think people got to keep in mind about the Chinese Communist Party, who I think is on the ropes right now. If you look at either the Hong Kong deal, which they reneged on, the Paris Accord, which we now know from the Financial Times, they tripled down on coal-burning plants and never told anybody about it. If you look at what they did to President Obama and Biden when they signed in the Rose Garden about cyber intrusions and militarization of the South China Sea, they totally lied to people's faces. And if you look at this announcement about technology, which just got leaked last week, they promulgated that a year ago. Remember, the biggest geopolitical event we've had in the last year is China saying we want whole new standards. We're decoupling from the West. This thing, Andrew, on technology was in the middle of the intense negotiations of the Lighthizer deal that dealt with the 7 deadly sins and dealt with the verticals. What they're signaling of what they're really doing, and this is a huge thing, they're totally decoupling from the West on technology. They knew about it. They falsely, I think, went in and kept negotiating. And then Lee Hook came out 2 weeks ago and said, we're doubling or tripling down on state-owned industries. Continue to finance the state-owned industries like they're doing is exporting deflation and overcapacity to the world. They have no intention of standing behind.
Well, so here's my question. I don't disagree with anything you just said except for one piece of it, which is, how do you look at this trade negotiation and say that somehow the United States is winning? Because you're right, they're lying straight to our face, and they continue to. But throughout the past year, it doesn't seem, at least, that, what you say, we have them on the ropes.
President Trump looks at this, Andrew, I think, as this is an economic war that they've been running against us for 20 years. You probably understand this better than anybody. Trade is this part of it. Currency is this part, capital markets is this part, and technology is kind of the beating heart of it. Whether that's Huawei or trying to get off their own, now to have their own requirements and their own standards, to totally break off and decouple from the West. The trade piece is a relatively small piece of this. It's more symbolic than anything else. But President Trump, and I think this comes up to the trade negotiations and the deadline today this weekend, is that with NAFTA, or with the USMCA, which is obviously on trade much more important than the China piece, and on 1 January, which nobody talks about, the Japanese deal that we've negotiated that kicks in, he's winning. He's winning on every level on trade, and that's why I think right now...
China auto sales are down 17 straight months. What's the latest export numbers from China?
Yeah.
Meanwhile, on Friday, we had a 50-year low in unemployment, 266,000 jobs, and new highs across the board, NASDAQ, S&P, and Dow. Where are you seeing the U.S. losing and China winning?
Can I just ask one question? I think it hurts China much more than it hurts us. But
Yes.
Steve Leisman brought up a point the other day, and I hadn't really thought it through to that point. Multinationals, U.S. multinationals, if you strip out China growth, their growth goes to zero. What do you think about that?
No, but I think first of all, I think shifting the supply chain back. First, it's East Asia is coming back to the United States. Remember, this is the central thing is about bringing high value added manufacturing jobs back to the United States. That's a commitment he made to the American people. He's very focused on that. That's what
might be the magic wand.
And it's to position us for the fourth industrial revolution. Right? This is why the situation with ZTE and Huawei is so important, and President Trump's policies are all looking at that. Companies, other markets are going to boom, right? And remember, this is also about freeing up what President Trump, what he's trying to do in the Lighthizer deal that deals with the 7 deadly sins, was to integrate really China into the world's market, not to make it this separate entity that was looking to become the advanced manufacturer.
Enforce the WTO things that should have been enforced since the beginning when they went in.
Look, he is working on really an economic order that restructures the world around freedom, democracy, and free market capitalism, right? That is a massive struggle. And you have a mercantilist, totalitarian dictatorship, right, that has enslaved their people, that's had a different business model. He's breaking that business model. That business model is in collapse. Look at the debt problem these companies have. Look at the meeting that she's in this week is probably one of the most important meetings the CCP's ever had. They're besieged in China, or in Hong Kong, and whether they're besieged, millennials who are on the streets fighting for free market capitalism and the rule of law. And inside their economy, I think we realize their growth's probably at zero. They have this massive, the New York Times reporting today, this massive problem with their corporations that can't pay back.
The Hong Kong protester was Time Person of the Year. Oh, wait, no, it wasn't. It was Greta. Anyway, politically, and it's bad to talk politically on whether we do things with China based on an election. But what would you urge the president to do? Should he do a skinny deal to get some grain purchases to kick it past November 2020, or just say we're not doing anything?
If they could be trusted, remember the skinny deal's a compromise to, I shouldn't say compromise, an accommodation to an accommodation. The president is a statesman. Is looking to accommodate and work with them every step of the way. They don't only move the goalpost, they lie to your face. We were supposed to have, and this is Secretary Mnuchin, in October we thought we had a deal.
That's an argument for walking away entirely.
Is that what you?
I think politically, and I think he signaled this the other day about past the 2020 election, which will even be stronger when he wins. I just think that right now, that the tariffs have been a winner. The economy's on fire. He does not need a deal. He has all the cards. He's a tough negotiator. He's a master deal maker. I think I think the tariffs should go in on Sunday, right? It actually drop the hammer again and make these guys focus on living up to commitments. I think this technology thing, look, you're the expert. I think this technology leak that they're getting off of all American technology, and that's Western Europe and Japan too, and they were doing it a year ago. They understood what they wanted to do to decouple totally from the West, set up a whole new level of standards. It shows you they are not partners in good faith. They have never lived up to any agreement, and they've lied to a number of people. From President Obama.
He says no deal. Stock market goes down. Maybe the economy's not as good next year. There's not as much to run on.
I don't know if you say the economy's not as good as next year.
So you're not saying that would be
we haven't seen it today.
Right.
By the way, the power of the numbers last week, inflation's at zero.
I think the market would go down now, and that could raise some questions.
If the tariffs go into effect, what happens to the market?
I'm not. All I know is that one of the issues we've had is the overvalued dollar, because in Trump's economy, everybody wants in.
Okay,
everybody in the world wants into the United States economy. Why? President Trump has had a very focused plan, and he's stuck to it.
Okay, here's where we're going. Here's where we're going with this. You think he's going to be reelected, but you think impeachment is going to hurt him, and there's going to be a pound of flesh. When we come back, I want to talk about that with you, because it's not. You think he'll be reelected, but this is going to be ugly, and he's going to get hurt. Is what you think?
Let's talk about it when we come back.
Okay.
So what do you think about what's happening in the impeachment situation? What does this mean for President Trump's reelection?
I think this has had since President Trump came out with a tweet that said unity and substance. Remember, he says the call was a perfect call. At the time he put that tweet out, there were a number of Republicans saying, well, what he did was not right, but it's not impeachable. That's gone. You have a total united Republican Party now that agrees that there was nothing wrong with this call. In fact, this is what he was hired about the American people to do. And I think this is all a show trial now in the House. It's a foregone conclusion. The action moves to the Senate. And I think the fundamental decision that is for the president to make is between an acquittal, right? And we talked about the negotiated acquittal, an acquittal and exoneration. And exoneration means, I think, a full trial. And last night you saw Judge Louis Gohmert going through the fact witnesses he wanted. I think the president of the United States is not going to just look for some simple acquittal. He's got the votes, but he's going to look to be exonerated. He believes, and I think his followers believe, and now all of the Republican Party believe, that what he did was correct. It is what he was hired to do, and he needs to be exonerated, not just acquitted by some majority vote.
Do you think it was a mistake for Nancy Pelosi to bring this action, to have it go forward, given how much pressure she was facing from her base as well?
I think she is a master political strategist, and while she had free shots on goal that the first 6 weeks until Matt Gaetz forced this, when he went down and exposed to the American people that the auditions were being done down in a skiff in the bowels of the Capitol, this about 5 or 6 weeks ago. Once this all came up, and remember, what the Democrats were hoping for is that it went on national TV, and particularly broadcast TV with the hearings, that the numbers were moving against the president. They would move more.
Are Americans paying attention?
I think they've done. I think besides people who are political junkies, I think America's kind of dialed out, right? And they've dialed out because they don't see it as affecting their lives. What they see affecting their lives is the jobs numbers from last week. And this is where I think Nancy Pelosi has really messed up, is that holding USMCA to right after you impeach him, I think signals that this thing's been on your desk for 1 year, and we lost 1 year of the benefit to the American people. Remember, what people want Congress to do is focus on how you take the country forward.
If it's about the economy, stupid, is President Trump wrong to push forward again with this trade war with China? Because if the stock market turns down, if CEOs decide that they are less willing to commit capital expenditures, and put that forward as a result, that in turn could hurt the U.S. economy. I'm not arguing that it doesn't hurt China worse, but if it's all about the economy,
but
does
Becky,
that come down to
here's
it?
what I think. I think what CEOs who are logical are going to see that USMCA sets up North America, Mexico, the United States, and Canada as a geostrategic manufacturing alternative.
So you think it actually spurs capital expenditure here in North America?
I think the one thing we're missing in those great jobs numbers is massive spending in CapEx. Mm-hmm. I think now CEOs are going to say the whole world wants in on the American economy. In a world of concern and potential chaos, America, and North America particularly, is a center of stability. Let's make capital expenditures. You're starting to see the supply chain first go to East Asia, but it's coming back here. That's what I'm saying. All of this is converging. And these are all actions that Donald Trump took over the last year. And now you're seeing the manifestation in numbers. I got to tell you, I was the one that was out in 2018 and saying, hey, they're going to win the House because they're in a roll. They got Bloomberg's money. They've selected these candidates in these 31 districts.
Yeah.
The Democrats, they're working hard. They're going door to door like the Tea Party in 2010. And I said, these candidates in these 30 districts never talk about impeachment. They talk about health care and the economy and national security. She's put those into jeopardy. And I think the big tell is going to be, you already have 2 that are not going to vote for it. But I think of those 30 Democrats, if 4 or 5 of those, like Max Rose and others, these former veterans, CIA people, kind of handpicked from central casting, if they sit there and you see the town halls are getting lit up, if 4 or 5 of those don't vote to impeach, then it's just not partisan, it's hyper-partisan. I think there's actually a potential to take back the House. And so what the Democrats, I think, may have done is to lock in control of the Senate, reinforce President Trump's reelection in 2020, and also concede the House so we could be back to the beginning of the Trump administration when we had all aspects of government. And if they don't think he's been transformative to date, which he does, and the progressive left knows this, more than the Republican establishment, because of the judges and the deconstruction of the administrative state, you haven't seen anything. And this is where China better really get savvy. President Trump has got I think, starting to get the winds to his back because of his actions and his conversion. And if they think they're going to renege, and remember, President Trump's about enforceability. The key to the original deal was transparency accountability and enforceability, the Lighthizer-Navarro-Trump deal. That is, if they think they're going to weasel out of and commit to something and back off, they don't understand that this president and his movement and his party, now united, is stronger than ever. And I think now you're going to start to see really run the tables.
We got a minute left. Going to be a brokered convention, and Hillary's going to fly in.
Well, I said Bloomberg's coming in.
You said Bloomberg.
And I've also said Hillary Clinton is after Bloomberg drops a money nuclear weapon on them on Super Tuesday, okay? And in the big states like California, I believe there are people in the Democratic Party. Michael Bloomberg is a moderate liberal Republican, okay? What they're going to turn to is who can save the Democratic Party. Because the people on the stage today are not going to beat Donald Trump. Democrats understand that, okay? So, and Michael Bloomberg's not going to beat Donald Trump either. They're still going to look for, and the Democratic Party has a history of this. I think you're going to see a rematch. Ali Frazier, it's going to be Clinton-Trump in 2020.
But you think that Bloomberg's going to get more support than thus far he has gotten thus far?
I think because look, he's put in more money in ads.
Well, it's going to have to come from Republicans because Democrats aren't going to want to support him. But Republicans don't like nanny-state, climate change, and gun control. Those are the three planks.
If Bloomberg can make the case that his money and also his operation of Everytown USA and this grassroots organization he's got and his smartness in applying capital, if he can convince people that he's competitive with Trump, you'll start to see it. The centrists are going to have a candidate.
The Dems are going to run a billionaire. The Dems are going to run a billionaire. It's anathema to everything.
That's why I think you're going to see Hillary Clinton eventually come in here.
You think the party is that rational? Meaning that no, I'm not saying about. By the way,
they don't want a competent.
Both parties are rational enough to think to themselves.
We're rational enough to have Donald Trump have the best candidate we've had since Reagan, and to back his policies. I think the Republicans and the populists and the national movement is quite rational.
What about those tweets?
By the way, the centrists within the Republican Party the whole time are like the centrists in the Democratic Party right now, and they're covering their face and they don't know what to do.
Really, at 95%, the centrists are...
For the exoneration of Trump at trial, I think you ought to hire 3 new lawyers to augment his team: Matt Gaetz, Lee Zeldin, and Judge Louis Gohmert, and really have a trial.
When I saw Karl Rove, the ultimate Bushy, just singing Trump's praises, I'm like, what world am I in? I realized what impeachment did for the Republicans. Steve, thank you for being with us this morning.